history is reimagined. Howard Zinn was a communist activist. You read, in most high schools and colleges, this is what they read now. This, I think, became a PBS documentary. He mentored Matt Damon as a child. They were neighbors, and that's why Damon is a radical leftist and why he plugged Zinn's book in Good Will Hunting. Before Zinn died, he said this in an interview.
Yes, if I want to be remembered for anything, it's for sort of introducing a different way of thinking about the world, about war, about human rights, about equality.
Okay. His different way of thinking is communism and making America the bad guy, the oppressor of the world. Anytime that accusation is made, anytime anybody says that, they cry foul. But I want to show you, this is from my private collection, as is the Chamberlain letter, as I try to preserve history. And you will understand, I think, why I was prompted about 3 years ago to start doing this and why I'm asking you to help me to preserve this. In this book, I bought this particular copy of this book because it's signed by Howard Zinn. And he writes in it, he says, we're prisoners of the system, and those prisoners will continue to rebel, blah, blah, blah. But in many ways, we were the old guard. But we writers, we professors, need to be the new guard. Once we understand this and act on it, not only will life be more satisfying for us right away, but our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will see a different and marvelous world. That is coming. I want to show you how this is actually happening tonight. I want to show you something that truly horrified me when I first saw it 2 weekends ago. And it was sent to me by a viewer of the program. And I got it on Saturday morning and I started reading it and I'm like, this cannot be true. And it is. It's the United States Department of Arts and Culture. And it is an effort to rewrite our history and catalyze a new culture for America. The phrase that I read in this from these people is, what would it be like? What would America's history be like if we could reimagine it? What? Not only are they doing that, they will couple it with America's latest propaganda machine. The group is called Imagining America. And when we showed it to many of our experts said, Glenn, this is what's happening all over the country with Common Core. And, Common Core is huge. Yes, it is. It is huge. But this is the history that Common Core will be teaching. And they'll be teaching it through art and music and film and history books. We don't want this to become as big as Common Core because we didn't pay attention to it. Now is the time to pay attention. I want to introduce you to the people who will be teaching and influencing your children within the next 5 to 10 years and what they're doing. Some of these people already are. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait until the rest of them have inflicted their views on my children and it's too late to reverse a new, reimagined history of America. What do you say we put them out of business before they can corrupt our history and our children? Here's what they have to say about changing the very foundation of our children's education. This is this group in their own words. Watch carefully.
We ultimately need to change the face of government itself, right? And how do you do that is you have people who ultimately push the envelope and run for political office themselves. We often, can change the political discourse when we change the people who actually sit at the table. When we're at the table and we're helping make the decisions and create the policy, we're there making sure that things are going to get done right.
But looking at the different sectors we all work in and how we can push the paradigm. So for example, those of us who teach in universities what's the art that we have our students looking at? So There are a lot of different positions from which we can make a much wider paradigm.
How do we bring the K-12 schooling back into this conversation?
The discussion of redistribution of money, there's a question of inequity. And there's a question of how do you change that process that distributes that money? If you have $1, how do you equitably distribute that dollar? And how do we approach that issue?
It's the fears that generate why we, people of color organizations, are not getting the funding that we need. And so if we try to rearrange these values, these fears, and say, okay, why is all this money going to the military and to the cops and to the laws that, you're going to go to jail, all these things that will are funded and able to put more people in jail, to stop and frisk more people, right? There's all that money that go into that. Why don't we put that money into, like you said, things that give people self-esteem, right? How come we can't switch that around?
The biggest thing that we do, right, is through the Department of Cultural Affairs. We're funding the arts, and through the Cultural Development Fund, which is upwards of $20-some-odd million, funding our cultural communities.
Okay. First of all, this shows you how much it is a lie when anybody says, no, this is just art. We're using taxpayer money, but it's just art. We're not trying to do propaganda. Listen to them. They are so bold now. They're doing it out in open. And we're able to catch them on their own website. Hello? Imagining America is the name of the group. And they were actually created, what a surprise, by the White House. But not this White House. Through Bill Clinton and the Millennial Foundation. Under Bill Clinton in 1998, he created this through an executive order. And the executive order's goal, ready for this, was to commemorate the millennium by honoring the past and imagining the future. So he used the opportunity of saying, we have to mark this in time, America. Look at the red, white, and blue. America, it's a millennial, it's 2000. We should pour some money in this and mark this time. But that was just the gateway. Imagining America's membership includes 90 universities: Columbia, NYU, Brown, the University of Chicago, the University of Washington, University of Santa Barbara, all of whom receive grants from, what a surprise, the Tides Foundation. Columbia, for example, received over $1 million from Tides just last year. Their $8 billion endowment apparently is just not enough. They need another $1 million from Tides. Not only is the university a full-time member of Imagining America, but their cultural for institutional and study change is listed as a close affiliate as well. Several of the organization's board members teach or are affiliates at the school. The University of Chicago, they got $100,000 in 2012 from Tides. In 2011, Brown received $10,000. University of Washington, $13,500 in 2012. UC Santa Barbara, $10,000. They are radicals. Several of the board members work closely with the government. What a surprise. So we have the government, radicals, and the universities. And some of their affiliates are actually public officials. They actually hold conferences and presentations about how to re-author American history, and it's all funded by you. Let me show you some of them. Jimmy Van Brammer. He is a close affiliate of the group. He's an actual member of the New York City Council. He's the guy in the video talking about giving upwards to $20 million in your taxpayer money to the arts. Pam Korza, she's on the advisory board. She's actually the co-director of the Soros-funded Animating Democracy. Bruce Burgett, he is the chair of Imagining America. He is the author of Sex Panic and Nation, an American Literary History. Sounds riveting. Randy Martin is another board member. He is the author of Crucial Moves, Dance Studies and Theory and Politics, and also this one, which I just love. On your marks. Relinking socialism and the left. Kevin Bott is also the associate director for the group, and he does, at a minimum security prison in Uganda, he does some work there, transitioning criminals back to freedom. And some of the stuff that he does in the prison there and the prison here, it's whatever, but it's on your money, your dime. With Imagining America, they openly admit to collaborating with, quote, a whole domain of robust organization with which higher education-based scholars and artists could collaborate, meaning that the Tides Foundation, the Tides-supported universities, is right alongside with this and government. They call non-academic cultural organizations, such as the Animating Democracy Initiative, the Community Arts Network, and the International Coalition of the Sites of Conscience. That's what Tides done. They take all of these, and it's all, again, a giant shell game. Everybody's getting money from the same place. And by the way, Tides gets money, of course, from George Soros, our favorite, and his Open Society Foundation. Oh, and there's another thing. Imagining America closely connected with the new U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, the latest addition to the progressive propaganda arm. In fact, the new department was at the Imagining America's latest conference. They recorded it and they promoted it. And on their website, it reads, quote, "Together we create." Create what? New American history, reimagined. The United States Department of Arts and Culture wants to recreate and rewrite our history using, quote, observation, improvisation, innovation, resourcefulness, and creativity. They even have their own take on our founding documents, which states, "We the people do hereby create a new citizen-powered initiative to cultivate the public interest in art and culture and catalyze art and culture in the public interest." They also hold these truths to be self-evident, which are interesting. Culture is a human right. It is. Cultural diversity is a social good. You should say that to Europe. Culture is the sum total of public, private, individual, and collective action. The work of artists is a powerful resource for community development, education, health care, protection of our commonwealth, and other democratic public purposes. By the way, their website also proudly proclaims, despite the federal government shutdown, the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture remains open. Interesting. So what is it this group of well-funded radicals wants to do? And how is this guy involved? All right, I want to tell you about the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture. I want you to know this is not actually a government agency, but it could be, they say. And they don't say it lightly. It could be. They mean it. Because Imagining America is there. And Imagining America has their connections and relationships with the government and all those people in the government. So the department will function like it really is a U.S. department, using tax dollars to achieve all of its goals. What are the goals? Well, Imagining America tells us on their own website, they claim to want to replace history with what they call a continuum of scholarship. What the hell in English does that even mean? It means we rewrite history as we go. Quote, claiming the past and creating the future. See, if they can just change some of the facts of the past, they can change what our future is. That was one of their event headlines, by the way. In their own words, they want to document the past from the vantage point of the present to articulate a socially just future. Look at that. They want to rewrite history from the vantage point of the present to articulate a socially just future. We're no longer talking about scholars. Instead of looking at the facts, they want scholarly creative activity. What does that even mean? There's no such thing. They want to encompass different forms of making knowledge about, for, and with diverse publics and communities. What they're saying here is, the facts don't matter anymore. The ends justify the means. We'll make our own rules. We'll change things because we can make our own story. And when scholarly work doesn't work out, we'll use creativity. You just use art. You make it up. And you suit your own agenda. You twist history in your favor. I am telling you, when I saw this, I called my wife in from the other room and we sat on the edge of the bed, and I have felt like a real failure today. I really have. I met with Rafael Cruz. You're going to meet him here in a minute. And I know what he's supposed to do. And I've just felt like a failure because I don't know how to help him. And the other thing that I have been saying that I have to do, and I've done the best I can, is I have been told to preserve history. I have been trying to preserve history, but I'm one guy. They have foundations behind all of this. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then your tax dollars on top of it. And I know now why I was told, preserve history. Preserve the documents, the good and the bad. Preserve them. Because they're going to erase all of this. And if the government is involved, they have the Smithsonian. If the universities are involved, that's who gets all the rest of the documents. But now they're saying a document is what counts? Not really. The present is what counts. This is what they've actually told their faithful followers to do in one of their reports. Forget about documents that count. It's the future. You frame everything in a way that, quote, narrates the arc of the work, locates it relative to one or more disciplines or fields. What? Explains the contributions to the public good. In fact, the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture looks uncomfortably like, boy, is this going to cause trouble, the Ministry of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment. That sounds really good. You know who did that one? No, he's going to say Nazis again. Yes. That was the government agency used to enforce and regulate the culture of Nazi Germany in the 1940s. Who was the head of that one? Goebbels, the Reich minister. He was responsible for controlling the German news media, literature, arts, filmmaking, theater, music, broadcasting, all of it. Do you know that Goebbels was actually a filmmaker? I didn't know this until recently. I found this amazing. And you can actually watch this on YouTube, and it's even more incredible to actually watch it. Do you know that Goebbels was a frustrated filmmaker, and he said the most important thing we can do, this is right at the beginning of the Nazis, is we have to make a movie. We have to make a movie that explains how bad the capitalists in America and England are. We're going to make the movie Titanic. This Titanic makes the movie that James what's-his-face did look small. They poured millions and millions and millions of dollars into their version of Titanic. Why did they do it? To rewrite history. See, they used art. They left the documents there. There was enough there. We knew that, it was a British ship. We knew what was going on. But then we had to use art to tell it from the perspective of the future. In this telling of the Titanic, this guy is a German. Now, there was no German officers that were heroes on the Titanic. There was no German officer on board the Titanic. But he was warning the reckless British captain that he was going too fast. And the boat sunk. The British crew were nothing but cowards, and the Germans were all brave. It bashed capitalists the whole time. They made stock prices and the quest for profit as the reason the captains were forced to go at high speeds. This is exactly what Germany was doing. They reimagined history with a look to the social frontier. This is exactly what this group is doing, and you need to tell your friends. And if they don't believe you, doesn't matter. You've got to keep your eye on these people because we're only one network and no other network is going to cover this. Turning the history of the United States history into a story of evil and hatred. All of the guys on the chalkboard, and there's so much, are advising the groups. There's so many more people. This is not about your kids anymore. It's not about their future or education. It's, quote, a very different approach that builds upon a deep collaboration with people in the broader community. I can tell you that community doesn't include David Barton, any religious people that I would associate with that aren't Jim Wallace, or any actual historians worth their salt. Just like communism, imagining America is going to change our history and our future. And they're not the only group either. The Hollywood Health and Society is a program at USC at the Annenberg Norman Lear Center. Norman Lear, we know him because All in the Family, but Norman Lear was a radical as well. His people donated a department at the university to provide, quote, entertainment industry professionals with an accurate and timely information for storylines on health and climate change, end quote. So you see what they're doing? I'm one guy building this network. This is why I feel so overwhelmed all the time. I'm one guy building this network, building a movie studio, and I have to go beg, borrow, and steal. I have so many ideas and so many things and so many other people coming to me with ideas, and we have to beg, borrow, and steal to be able to keep the doors open. Meanwhile, they have the companies, the universities, Hollywood, the movie studios, the Tides Foundation, George Soros, and everybody who's not looking for a return on their investment. They're just looking to change the world. Is there anybody on our side that would like to change the world for the better? Just this USC grant alone has $500,000 to train people who write for TV and movies to make the acceptable and proper storylines to depict Obamacare and global warming as something real and good. And all of it is presented as formal education. Your kids are already not learning history. I have news for you. We never learned history. We never learned history, and you know it if you've watched me for a long time. The stuff that we have, the facts that we have shown you, tell you that you were already indoctrinated. But now we are going to take this to a whole new level. Your kids, my kids, will get a distorted version of the truth rewritten by the American left and now a worldwide progressive socialist and communist movement. Individually, yes, they're just another cohort of the radical leftist professors and behavioral scientists who spend taxpayer dollars on radical experiments in education and sociology. But these kinds of experiments are happening all over the country. The reason why I showed you Howard Zinn is because this guy made a huge impact. Everyone says, oh, you can just dismiss this stuff. Really? You're just going to say it's just a bunch of professors. Don't worry about them. Again. Remember this letter? I showed you at the beginning. Signed by Neville Chamberlain. This is the actual letter. In this letter it says, I met with your Fuhrer. And he's a man of peace, just as we are. And you will change things in Europe. This was a letter written in hopes, not in facts, but in hopes, and it was written to the Hitler Youth. When Neville Chamberlain came back, he sat down and wrote this letter, and it was used as propaganda in England and in Germany. I ask you, first of all, we have got to start putting our money together and our heads together. We have got to start putting our best minds together and look for a big picture. We're talking about, can we save the sequester of 2%? They're talking about changing the world. And I ask you, as just in one individual, in your life, do not be Neville Chamberlain. Stalin, Mao, Hitler, these guys, they all know if we just grab the children and we have the access to the professors, the schools, and to Hollywood, the media, the arts, we can reimagine our whole country. We can reimagine our founding, our history. And if we put our heads in the sand and we become Neville Chamberlain, it will all be lost. And there will be no getting it back until someone says, you know, I had this idea and I think it's self-evident. Hear me out, I think all of us were created equal. And I think there is a God. And He gives us certain rights that nobody can take away. And their life and their liberty. And that we should be able to do the things we want. And somebody else in the room will say, you should write that down. That's revolutionary. That's never been thought of before. Because we will have lost it. And so it will be left for a later generation to write it down again for the first time.